The quantum corridor demonstration was supposed to be flawless. That's what Orion Vale, CEO of Heliox Dynamics, had promised the assembled delegates at Aurelia Ring Station. The neutral diplomatic outpost floated between Earth Alliance space and the Talaran Empire, its crystalline spires catching starlight from 3 distant suns. Aidan Cole adjusted his interface goggles for the 5th time, trying to focus on the holographic displays showing corridor energy flows. As a quantum corridor engineer, he'd seen plenty of corporate presentations, but this one made his skin crawl. The numbers didn't add up. The safety margins were too thin, pushed to the edge for a more spectacular show. "Impressive turnout," a melodic voice said beside him. He turned to see Princess Saris Talora, her silver-blue skin shimmering under the conference hall's ambient lighting. Unlike most Talaran nobility, she wore a simple diplomatic suit rather than ceremonial robes. Her violet eyes studied the crowd with sharp intelligence. "Your Highness," Aidan nodded, surprised she'd approached him. "Though I'd be more impressed if they showed real operational data instead of these sanitized projections." Saris tilted her head. A gesture he'd learned meant curiosity among her people. "You don't trust Heliox's presentation?" "I don't trust any company that claims absolute safety while running their corridor generators at 98% capacity." He gestured at his readouts. "That's like driving a car with the engine redlined and claiming it'll never break down." A small smile played at her lips. "Aidan Cole, the engineer who published the paper on distributed corridor architecture. I've read your work." "You have?" He couldn't hide his surprise. Talaran royalty studying human technical papers wasn't exactly common. "Infrastructure affects everyone, Mr. Cole. When Heliox gained exclusive control over the starseed corridors, entire populations became dependent on their goodwill." Her expression darkened. "Or lack thereof." The lights dimmed as Orion Vale took the stage. The human executive radiated confidence in his tailored suit, his smile as artificial as the corridor demonstration behind him. Swirling vortexes of energy painted the air in blues and greens, showing how Heliox's quantum corridors could transport matter across vast distances instantly. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," Vale began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "Today marks a new era in interstellar travel. Our proprietary algorithms ensure absolute safety while maximizing efficiency. No more delays, no more uncertainty, just pure, profitable progress." Aidan's jaw clenched at the word profitable. 3 months ago, a coastal town on Earth had lost power during a hurricane because Heliox had diverted energy from the local grid to their corridor network. His mother, May Cole, had tried to expose the truth, only to be labeled a saboteur in the media. The accusation had destroyed her reputation, though no charges were ever filed. "The refugee sectors in the outer rings have been waiting 8 weeks for medical supplies," Saris murmured, her voice pitched low enough that only Aidan could hear. "Heliox claims there's insufficient corridor capacity, yet here they are, burning enough energy to power a small moon." "Because refugees can't pay premium rates," Aidan replied bitterly. "Their algorithm prioritizes profit over people." On stage, Vale gestured grandly as the demonstration reached its crescendo. The artificial corridors pulsed brighter, their harmonics singing through the air. "Observe the perfect synchronization, the flawless control that only Heliox can provide." That's when Aidan saw it. A flutter in the energy readings on his personal scanner, a resonance cascade building in the left generator array. His blood ran cold. "Get down!" he shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the demonstration's roar. The explosion wasn't massive, but in the confined space of the conference hall, it didn't need to be. A brilliant flare of white-hot energy erupted from the left generator, sending shards of crystallized quantum matter spinning through the air like deadly stars. Aidan didn't think. He moved. His body slammed into Princess Saris, driving her to the floor as the blast wave passed overhead. Fragments of energized matter sparked against his back, his basic civilian shield generator overloading instantly. Pain lanced through him as several pieces punched through, but he held his position, shielding her with his body until the chaos subsided. The hall fell silent, except for the hiss of overloaded circuits and the groans of the injured. Aiden rolled off the princess, his back feeling like it was on fire. Through the smoke, he saw Sarah staring at him with wide eyes, unharmed except for a few scratches. You saved me," she breathed. "Yeah, well," Aiden grimaced, trying to sit up. "Someone had to. Your security was too busy watching the light show." Emergency teams flooded the hall. Medical scanners waved over Aiden's back, and he heard someone mutter about lucky to be alive and should have been fatal. But he was more interested in the conversation happening near the destroyed generator. "Impossible!" Vale was shouting at his technicians. The safety protocols were triple-checked. "Sir, the logs show the limiters were manually overridden," a nervous technician replied. Someone pushed the resonance past safe parameters for a more impressive visual effect. Aiden caught Saris's eye. She'd heard it too. The medical team tried to cart him off to the infirmary, but Emperor Kale Talora himself appeared, his imposing 7-foot frame cutting through the crowd like a warship through space. Unlike his daughter, he wore full ceremonial armor, its surface rippling with protective energy fields. "You saved my daughter," the Emperor stated, his voice carrying absolute authority. His amber eyes studied Aiden with an intensity that made the engineer want to squirm. "What is your name?" "Aiden Cole, Your Majesty, Systems Engineer, Quantum Corridor Specialist." "The one who advocates for open-source corridor architecture," Kale said. It wasn't a question. "Saris has mentioned your work." Aiden glanced at the princess, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I believe infrastructure this critical shouldn't be controlled by a single entity, sir." "Indeed." Kale's expression was unreadable. "Medics, treat his injuries here. I want him mobile." He turned to his daughter. "Saris, convene an emergency session of the Infrastructure Committee. This incident requires investigation." "Already composing the summons, Father," Saris replied, her fingers dancing over a holographic interface. As medics sprayed healing foam on Aiden's back, sealing the wounds with bioregenerative compounds, he became aware of recording drones hovering nearby. The explosion had been captured from multiple angles, including the moment he'd thrown himself over the princess. Within minutes, the footage was spreading across the quantum communication networks. The headlines wrote themselves: "Earth Engineer Saves Talaran Princess." "Human Hero at Aurelia Ring." "Cross-Species Crisis. Who is Aiden Cole?" "Great," Aiden muttered. "Just what I needed. Fame." Saris moved closer as the medics worked. "That bothers you." "I'm an engineer, not a hero. I just did what anyone would do." "No," she said quietly. "You did what you would do. There's a difference." She paused, studying him. "My father will want to reward you. Fair warning, his rewards often come with complications. More complicated than being blown up at a tech demo." Her laugh was like chimes in a gentle breeze. "You have no idea." Emperor Kale returned, having finished issuing orders to his security detail. He looked at Aiden with an expression that might have been approval. "You'll join us for the investigation, Mr. Cole. Your technical expertise and demonstrated commitment to safety will be valuable." It wasn't a request. Aiden nodded, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing injuries. "Of course, Your Majesty." "Excellent." Kyle's smile was sharp as a blade. "We'll also discuss your theories on infrastructure democratization. I find myself suddenly very interested in alternatives to monopoly control." As the Emperor strode away, Aiden caught something in his expression, a flicker of calculation that went beyond mere gratitude. He'd seen that look before in corporate boardrooms. right before someone made a move that changed everything. "Your father's planning something," he said to Saris. "My father is always planning something," she replied. "The question is whether we'll like where his plans lead." The medical team finally cleared Aiden to move, though they insisted on a monitor patch to track his healing progress. As he stood, he saw Vale being questioned by station security, his confident demeanor cracking under pressure. "Good. Let him sweat." "Come," Saris said, offering her arm for support. "We have work to do. The emergency session convenes in an hour, and I want your analysis of what happened before we face the committee." Aiden accepted her help, trying not to think about how natural it felt. "You know this wasn't really an accident, right? Someone made a choice to push those systems beyond safe limits." "I know." Her violet eyes hardened. "And we're going to make sure everyone else knows it too." As they made their way through the station, Aiden's personal communicator buzzed with messages. News outlets wanting interviews, engineering colleagues asking if he was insane, and one message that made his breath catch. It was from his mother. "Saw the news. Proud of you, son. Maybe now people will listen when you speak truth to power. Be careful. Love. Mom." He showed it to Saris, who read it with a thoughtful expression. "Your mother sounds wise. She tried to expose Heliox 3 months ago. They ruined her reputation for it." The princess stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "Then we have even more reason to ensure justice is served. My father values loyalty and courage above all else. You demonstrated both today. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." "Exactly," she smiled, and for a moment, the weight of the situation lifted. "That's what makes you dangerous to people like Vale. You actually care." They resumed walking, heading toward the secure conference rooms, where the infrastructure committee would meet. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Aiden could see the starseed corridors in the distance, rings of light connecting star systems in a web of controlled wormholes, beautiful and terrible in their power. "Those corridors should serve everyone," he said quietly, "not just those who can afford premium access." "Then help me make that happen," Saris replied. "My father has given us an opening. The explosion, horrible as it was, has created an opportunity for change." "You've been planning this," Aiden realized. The public forum on infrastructure access wasn't just about policy discussion. You were building a coalition. Her smile turned sly. "I may have been hoping for a catalyst, though I certainly didn't expect it to be so dramatic, or to involve you throwing yourself into danger for me." "Yeah, well, about that." Aiden rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly awkward. "I should probably apologize for tackling royalty." "Don't you dare," she said firmly. "You saved my life, in Talaran culture. That creates a bond between us. A deep one." Before he could ask what she meant, they arrived at the conference room. Through the door, he could hear raised voices, already debating the implications of the explosion. Committee members from a dozen species had gathered, their holographic representatives joining those physically present. "Ready?" Saris asked. Aiden thought about his mother, about the refugees waiting for supplies, about all the people suffering under Heliox's stranglehold on critical infrastructure. "Let's do this." They entered together, and the room fell silent. All eyes turned to them. The princess and the human engineer, who had become the most famous pair in the galaxy in the span of an hour. Behind them, through the windows, the starseed corridors pulsed with energy, waiting to be freed from their corporate chains. The real work was about to begin. Chapter 2. Corridors, Contracts, and a Crown Dad's Grin. The Infrastructure Committee's investigation began at dawn the next day. Though dawn was a relative concept on Aurelia Ring, the station's artificial day-night cycle had just shifted the ambient lighting to a soft golden hue when Aiden found himself standing before a tribunal of the galaxy's most powerful infrastructure regulators. Mr. Cole, the committee chair, A Zilani whose crystalline form refracted the morning light, began. Your preliminary analysis suggests deliberate sabotage of safety protocols. Can you elaborate? Aiden activated his holographic display, showing the energy readouts he'd captured moments before the explosion. The corridor generators were running a modified version of Heliox's standard control software. Someone inserted code to bypass the thermal limiters. Look here. He highlighted a section of data. The resonance frequency spiked to 112% of safe parameters. That's not a malfunction. That's a choice. Bah. Objection. Orion Vale stood from the defendant's table, his lawyer trying unsuccessfully to pull him back down. Mr. Cole has no authority to access our proprietary systems. I didn't access anything, Aiden replied calmly. Your systems were broadcasting their status on open channels. Anyone with a standard engineering scanner could see it. The question is why your absolute safety demonstration needed to run so hot. Emperor Kale, observing from a raised platform alongside other heads of state, leaned forward slightly. His interest was palpable, and Aiden noticed how Vale's lawyer grew even more nervous. Furthermore, Aiden continued, pulling up another display. This isn't the first time Heliox has pushed systems beyond safe limits for profit. 3 months ago, during Hurricane Sigma on Earth's eastern coast, power was diverted from emergency systems to maintain corridor operations for premium cargo shipments. That investigation found no wrongdoing, Vale protested. That investigation was shut down after my mother, May Cole, was labeled a saboteur in your media campaign. Aiden shot back, his professional calm finally cracking. She was the grid supervisor who tried to stop the diversion. You destroyed her career for telling the truth. Princess Saris stood from her position at the committee table. I moved to expand this investigation beyond yesterday's explosion to include a full audit of Heliox's operational history and infrastructure prioritization algorithms. Seconded, said the Rigelian ambassador, his telepathic voice resonating in everyone's minds. Vale's face had gone pale. This is a witch hunt. We provide essential services to billions. Then you should have no problem opening your systems for review, Saris replied smoothly. Unless, of course, there's something you'd prefer to keep hidden. The committee voted overwhelmingly to expand the investigation. As the session adjourned for data collection, Aiden found himself approached by Emperor Kale himself. Walk with me, Mr. Cole, the Emperor commanded. They strolled through the station's diplomatic quarter, past gardens that showcased flora from 100 worlds. Kyle's security detail maintained a discreet distance, giving them privacy to talk. You handled yourself well in there, Kale observed. Though I sense this is personal for you. My mother deserved better. Your Majesty. She tried to save lives, and Heliox crucified her for it. Kale paused by a fountain whose water flowed upward in spirals, defying gravity through localized field manipulation. Tell me, Mr. Cole, what would you do if you had the power to reshape the corridor network? Aiden didn't hesitate. Open source the control protocols. Create independent oversight with rotating members from all affected systems. Establish mandatory humanitarian lanes that can't be bought or diverted. Make the infrastructure serve the people, not the other way around. Idealistic, Kyle noted, and expensive. Less expensive than the current system's hidden costs. How much does the Empire spend on refugee crisis management because supply shipments get delayed? How much productivity is lost when workers can't afford to travel home? Heliox's monopoly creates inefficiencies everywhere except their profit margins. The Emperor's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested approval. My daughter speaks highly of your work. She showed me your distributed architecture proposal. Interesting ideas about using quantum entanglement to create redundant pathways. The technology exists, Aiden said. We just need the political will to implement it. Political will. Kale smiled, and it was not entirely comforting. That, Mr. Cole, is where things become complicated. Follow me." He led Aiden to a secure conference room where Princess Ceres was already waiting, along with several advisors. On the table was a physical document, written on traditional Talaran memory crystal. "The right of shield kin," Kale announced. "An ancient tradition of my people. When someone saves the life of a royal family member through personal sacrifice, they may be adopted into the protective circle of the crown." Aiden looked between father and daughter, confused. "Your Majesty, I don't understand. I'm honored, but—" "The right was already enacted," Kale interrupted. "The moment you shielded my daughter with your body, accepting injury to protect her, the conditions were met. I formalized it immediately after the explosion." "Father," Ceres exclaimed, clearly surprised. "You didn't tell me you'd completed the ritual." "I saw no need to delay," Kale replied with a shrug that looked odd on his imposing frame. "The political protection it offers Mr. Cole will be useful in the coming days. Heliox will undoubtedly attempt to discredit him, as they did his mother." Aiden sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "So what exactly—" "Legally, you're now under the protection of the Talaran crown," Ceres explained, shooting her father an exasperated look. "Any attack on you is considered an attack on the royal family. It's typically reserved for— well, no human has ever received the honor before." "It also means," Kale added, with what might have been mischief in his amber eyes, "that I can officially appoint you as Special Technical Advisor to the Infrastructure Reform Initiative. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. You now have the authority to access any technical system in Heliox's network for your investigation." That's incredible," Aiden managed. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Don't thank me yet," Kale warned. "Vale won't take this quietly. He has powerful allies and deep pockets. But now, so do you." He produced a data pad. "This contains everything our intelligence service has gathered on Heliox's operations. I believe you'll find it illuminating." Aiden activated the pad and his eyes widened. Financial records, communication logs, technical specifications that weren't supposed to exist. "How did you—" "A ruler who doesn't know what happens in his space isn't a ruler for long," Kale said simply. "I've been watching Heliox's growing influence with concern. Your mother's case particularly troubled me. A brave woman standing against injustice, crushed by corporate power." His expression hardened. "That ends now." Over the next several days, Aiden dove into the data with the focused intensity that had earned him his reputation. Working alongside Ceres and a team of investigators, he uncovered a web of corruption that went deeper than anyone had imagined. "Look at this," he told Ceres during one late-night session. They were alone in the secure workroom, surrounded by holographic displays showing corridor traffic patterns. "Heliox has been using predictive algorithms to create artificial scarcity. They throttle certain routes just enough to drive up demand, then auction priority access to the highest bidder." Ceres leaned closer, her proximity distracting in a way Aiden tried not to think about. "These patterns, they're targeting refugee evacuation routes." "Exactly. Create a crisis, then profit from the solution." His hands clenched. During the Proxima evacuations last year, they delayed medical supply corridors for 48 hours. The official report blamed unexpected resonance interference. But look, he pulled up another display. They diverted that capacity to luxury cruise lines. How many people died because of those delays? Conservative estimate 3,000. Could be as high as 5. Aiden's voice was rough. Also, rich tourists could shave a few hours off their vacation travel. Ceres placed a hand on his shoulder. The touch was gentle but grounding. "We'll make them answer for it. All of it." "Your father was right about Vale not taking this quietly," Aiden said, pulling up another file. "There have been 3 attempts to hack our investigation servers in the last day alone. Plus, look at this." The display showed a media broadcast from Earth, a documentary about the Infrastructure Committee's investigation, painting Aiden as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge for his mother's disgrace. It featured paid experts questioning his mental stability and suggesting the explosion had been staged. "They're trying to control the narrative," Saris observed. "Make you the villain before the truth comes out." "Joke's on them," Aiden replied with a bitter smile. "Thanks to your father's shieldkin thing. Attacking me just makes them look worse." "The right of shieldkin isn't a thing," Saris corrected, though her tone was amused. "It's a sacred tradition dating back 3,000 years. You're technically family now." "Your family is complicated." "You have no idea." She pulled up her own datapad. "Speaking of family, my father sent this. Apparently, it's a gift for his new shield son." Aiden looked at the screen and blinked. It was a comprehensive guide to Talaran court etiquette, complete with helpful annotations like, "Don't do this unless you want to start a duel," and "This gesture means either hello or I plan to steal your spacecraft," depending on context. At the bottom was a personal note from Kale. "Study well. The anniversary gala is next month. Traditional dress required. Yes. That includes the ceremonial shoulder spikes. Welcome to the family. P. Ja. Saris likes earth jazz music. Do with that information what you will." "Your father is trying to set us up," Aiden said, heat creeping up his neck. "My father is about as subtle as a corridor explosion," Saris agreed, though she was smiling. "But let's focus on the investigation for now. We can deal with his matchmaking after we've destroyed Heliox's monopoly." They worked through the night, building their case piece by piece. Dawn found them surrounded by empty stimulant containers and breakthrough revelations. The smoking gun came in the form of internal communications between Vale and his board of directors. "Got it," Aiden breathed. Internal memo from Vale to his board, dated 6 months ago. Quote, "The humanitarian corridor requirements are eating into our margins. Recommend reclassifying emergency medical shipments as standard cargo to bypass priority protocols." End quote. "That's admission of deliberate violation of interstellar law," Saris said. "Medical shipments have protected status for a reason. It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective." Aiden pulled up another document. They created a shell company to handle reclassification services. For a fee, they'd change the manifest codes on shipments to avoid humanitarian obligations. They called it dynamic cargo optimization. "How much?" 50 million credits in the last fiscal year alone, all while refugee camps waited months for basic supplies. Saris stood, her usual diplomatic composure cracking to reveal the steel underneath. "We're taking this to the full committee today. No more delays, no more investigations. It's time to act." "Vale won't go down without a fight," Aiden warned. "He's got enough money to buy half the committee." "Then it's fortunate we have something money can't buy," Saris replied. "The truth, and a very angry emperor who takes attacks on his family personally," as if summoned by his daughter's words. Emperor Kale entered the workroom, somehow managing to look imposing despite the early hour. He surveyed the evidence displays with satisfaction. "Excellent work," he said. "Both of you. The committee convenes in 3 hours. I trust you'll be ready to present your findings." "We'll be ready," Aiden confirmed. "Good." Kale's expression shifted to something more personal. "Aiden, a word of advice. When you present today, remember that you're not just an engineer anymore. You're shield-kin to the Talaran throne. Act like it." "I'm not sure I know how to do that, Your Majesty." "Simple," Kale smiled. "Stand tall, speak truth, and don't let anyone intimidate you. You faced an explosion to save my daughter. Corporate lawyers should be considerably less frightening." After the Emperor left, Aiden turned to Saris. "Your father is terrifying." "He's actually in a good mood," she replied. "You should see him when someone threatens the Empire or interrupts his morning tea ceremony. They spent the remaining time preparing their presentation, organizing evidence into an airtight case. As they worked, Aiden found himself stealing glances at Saris. The way she commanded the data, building arguments with surgical precision, was genuinely impressive. When she caught him looking, she raised an eyebrow. "Something on your mind, Shield brother?" "Just thinking," he said. "A week ago, I was a nobody engineer with a rejected proposal and a ruined mother. Now I'm part of alien royalty, taking on the biggest corporation in known space. It's a lot. Regretting your heroic tackle?" "No," he said immediately. "Never. This isn't how I expected my life to go." Saris moved closer, her violet eyes serious. "Life rarely follows our expectations, but sometimes the unexpected path leads somewhere better. My father sees something in you, Aiden. So do I." "What do you see?" "Someone who puts principles before profit, who faces danger for others without hesitation, who could help build a better future if given the chance." She paused. "Also, someone who apparently needs to learn 37 different formal greetings before the anniversary gala." 37. Traditional Talaran events are very complicated. Don't worry. I'll help you practice. After we destroy Heliox's monopoly and revolutionize interstellar infrastructure. "Just another day at the office," Aiden said dryly. She laughed, and he decided it was his new favorite sound. "Come on, Shield brother. Time to change the galaxy." As they gathered their evidence and headed for the committee chambers, Aiden felt the weight of what they were about to do. But also, for the first time since his mother's disgrace, he felt hope. He had truth on his side, the protection of the Talaran crown, and a brilliant princess who believed in justice as much as he did. Vale and Heliox had no idea what was coming for them. Chapter 3. Open the gates, gently. The committee chamber erupted the moment Aiden finished presenting the evidence. Representatives from dozens of worlds shouted over each other, some demanding immediate action against Heliox, others calling for more investigation, and a vocal minority insisting the evidence must be fabricated. Orion Vale stood at his defendant's podium, his face cycling through shades of red that would have been fascinating if Aiden had been in a mood to appreciate it. "This is corporate espionage," Vale shouted above the din. "These so-called documents were clearly obtained illegally." "Actually," Aiden replied calmly, letting his voice carry through the chaos. "Every piece of evidence came from public regulatory filings, open-channel broadcasts, and your own marketing materials. Your company was so confident in its untouchability that you didn't even try to hide your crimes properly." The Zelani committee chair struck her crystalline gavel, sending harmonic vibrations through the room that compelled silence. "Order. We will have order." She turned her faceted eyes toward Vale. "Mr. Vale, do you deny the authenticity of these communications?" Vale's legal team huddled around him, whispering frantically. Finally, his lead attorney stood. "We neither confirm nor deny the authenticity of documents that may have been altered or taken out of context. We demand a full forensic analysis before these proceedings continue." Forensic analysis. Princess Saris rose from her seat, datapad in hand. "I'm happy to provide one. Every document we've presented contains quantum encrypted timestamps that can be verified against Heliox's own servers. Unless, of course, Mr. Vale is suggesting his entire company's security infrastructure has been compromised for the past 3 years. Aiden watched Vale's face and saw the exact moment the man realized he was trapped. The timestamps were ironclad. Denying them meant admitting to massive security failures that would destroy investor confidence. Accepting them meant admitting to crimes against humanity. But Vale wasn't done fighting. Even if these documents are genuine, they represent standard business optimization practices. We have shareholders to consider, obligations to maximize efficiency, Efficiency. Aiden couldn't keep the disgust from his voice. You delayed insulin shipments to Kepler Station during a diabetes outbreak. 47 people died. Children died. Because a luxury cruise line paid more for that corridor slot. The chamber fell silent. Even Vale's supporters seemed shaken by the specific example. Emperor Kale, who had been observing silently from his platform, finally spoke. Mr. Vale, I have a question. A simple one. Do you believe infrastructure essential to life should serve profit or people? Vale straightened, trying to reclaim some authority. With respect, Your Majesty, that's a false dichotomy. Profit incentivizes innovation, maintains quality. I'll take that as profit, Kyle interrupted. Thank you for clarifying your position. He turned to address the full assembly. The Talaran Empire moves to support Princess Ceres's Infrastructure Commons Charter. Furthermore, we pledge our technical resources to developing an alternative to Heliox's proprietary systems. The Earth Alliance seconds the motion, announced Director Sarah Park. Earth's representative. She shot Aiden a meaningful look. We've been impressed by Mr. Cole's proposals for open-source corridor architecture. This is madness, Vale exploded. You can't just nationalize private infrastructure, we'll sue. We'll pull our services entirely. See how well your precious refugees travel without any corridors at all. An interesting threat, Ceres observed coolly. Are you suggesting Heliox would abandon billions in infrastructure and trillions in potential revenue out of spite? Not spite, Vale snarled. Business reality. Without exclusive control, we can't guarantee safety or efficiency. You mean you can't guarantee profit margins, Aiden countered. But please, tell us more about safety. Should I replay the footage from your absolutely safe demonstration that nearly killed Princess Ceres? Vale's lawyer grabbed his arm, but the CEO shook him off. That was sabotage, probably by you, trying to make us look bad. Sabotage. Aiden smiled grimly and activated his holodisplay. Let's examine that claim. Here's the code modification that bypassed your safety limiters. Notice the authentication signature. It comes from your personal development account. Mr. Vale, either you sabotaged your own demonstration, or you're so incompetent you let someone use your credentials. Which would you prefer to claim? The evidence hung in the air, damning in its clarity. Vale's authentication signature was unmistakable, quantum encrypted, and impossible to forge. That's not... I demanded a more impressive display. Yes, but I never meant... You never meant for it to go wrong, Ceres finished. Just like you never meant for those 47 diabetics to die. Just like you never meant for refugee camps to go without supplies. Your intentions matter less than the consequences of your actions. The committee chair called for a recess, but the damage was done. Representatives huddled in groups, discussing the implications. Aiden found himself pulled aside by Dr. Mira Sato, the Earth Alliance's chief legal advisor on infrastructure law. Impressive work, Mr. Cole, she said, her stern expression softening slightly. Though you realize Heliox won't simply accept defeat. They have treaties, contracts, embedded systems across thousands of worlds. That's why we need to offer an alternative, not just criticism, Aiden replied. He pulled up his personal project files. I've been developing something, called it GateRight OS, open-source corridor management software that any operator can implement. It includes mandatory humanitarian lanes, transparent prioritization algorithms, and distributed oversight to prevent any single entity from controlling access. Dr. Sato studied the specifications with growing interest. This is ambitious, the technical requirements alone, but it could work, with proper backing. That's where things get complicated, Aiden admitted. We need a transition plan that doesn't disrupt existing travel while we implement the new system. And we need to convince corridor operators that open standards won't destroy their business model. What if we don't need to convince them? Saris appeared at his elbow, having escaped her own crowd of questioners. What if we make it more profitable to join the commons than to resist? She activated her own display, showing economic projections. Heliox maintains its monopoly through artificial scarcity. But what if we could prove that open standards actually increase total corridor traffic? More accessibility means more travelers, more trade, more revenue opportunities even with lower individual margins. The rising tide lifts all boats approach, Dr. Sato mused. It could work, but we'd need a demonstration, proof of concept on a major route. I might have an idea about that, Aiden said slowly, pieces clicking together in his mind. The sanctuary route between Earth and New Jakarta. It's been throttled for months because Heliox claims technical limitations, but I've analyzed their setup. With GateWrite OS, we could triple capacity without any hardware changes. The refugee route, Saris breathed. Hundreds of thousands of climate refugees waiting for passage. If we could open that corridor, it would prove the humanitarian and the economic benefits simultaneously. Dr. Sato finished. Brilliant. But Heliox controls that route exclusively. For now, Emperor Kale interjected, joining their circle. His presence immediately drew attention from across the room. But their contracts include standard force majeure clauses. If their systems were to experience, say, a catastrophic failure requiring external assistance. Father, Saris warned, we can't sabotage their systems. That would make us no better than them. Of course not, Kale agreed with a smile that suggested he'd considered it anyway. But Mr. Cole's analysis shows their systems are already operating beyond safe parameters. It's only a matter of time before they fail naturally. When they do, we should be ready with an alternative. As if on cue, Aiden's scanner started beeping. He checked the readings and paled. Your Majesty, you might be more prescient than you know. The sanctuary route corridor is showing resonance fluctuations. If these patterns continue... How long? Kale asked sharply. 6 hours. Maybe 8 if they reduce traffic flow. Aiden was already pulling up technical specifications. A cascade failure at this level would strand every ship in transit and shut down the route for weeks. Unless someone with advanced corridor engineering knowledge and a ready-made solution happened to be available, Saris said, catching on to her father's thinking. We'd need legal authority to intervene, Dr. Sato pointed out. Heliox would have to request assistance or be overruled by emergency provisions. Leave that to me, Kale said. Mr. Cole, how quickly can you deploy your GateWrite system? Aiden's mind raced through the requirements. The core code is ready, but I'd need a team of engineers, real-time access to the corridor's control systems, and about 4 hours to integrate everything. It's never been tested at this scale. Then, you'll make history. Kale decided. Saris, convene an emergency session. Dr. Sato, prepare the legal framework for humanitarian intervention. Mr. Cole, gather your team. We have 6 hours to prevent a catastrophe and prove a new way forward. As the others scattered to their tasks, Aiden stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden escalation. He was about to implement theoretical software on one of the busiest corridors in human space, with millions of lives depending on its success. Second thoughts, Shield Brother, Saris asked, noticing his hesitation. Third and fourth thoughts, he admitted. What if I'm wrong? What if the system fails and people die because of my code? She stepped closer, her hand finding his. What if you're right and people live because of your courage? You can't let fear of failure stop you from trying to build something better. Easy for you to say. You're trained for this kind of pressure. You think royal training prepared me for overthrowing galactic infrastructure monopolies. She smiled. We're all making this up as we go. Aiden, the difference is we're doing it together. The next hours blurred into frantic activity. Aiden assembled a team of volunteer engineers from various worlds, each contributing expertise in different aspects of corridor dynamics. They worked in the committee's technical center, code flowing across screens as they raced against time. Integration Point 7 is showing resistance, called out Kenji Tanaka, a specialist from Mars. The Heliox protocols don't want a handshake with our authentication system. Route around it, Aiden instructed, his fingers flying over haptic interfaces. We'll create a compatibility layer. The beauty of open source is we can adapt to their mess instead of forcing compliance. Aiden, Saris's voice came through his earpiece. The emergency session is convening. Vale is fighting the intervention order. How's it going? He's claiming proprietary technology rights supersede humanitarian concerns. Some of the corporate representatives are supporting him. Aiden gritted his teeth. Of course, Vale would prioritize intellectual property over lives. Tell the committee we're 40% through integration. We can have basic functionality in 2 hours. Full optimization in 3. The corridor's degrading faster than predicted. You might not have 2 hours. Then we'll work faster. He turned to his team. Everyone, we're switching to emergency protocols. Forget elegant code. We need functional. We can clean it up after people are safe. The engineers dove back into their work with renewed urgency. Through the transparent walls of the technical center, Aiden could see crowds gathering in the station's public spaces. Word had spread about the impending corridor failure and the attempt to fix it. Thousands of beings watched the news feeds, many of them refugees hoping to use the sanctuary route. No pressure, muttered Tanaka, glancing at the crowds. Use it, Aiden advised. Those people are why we're doing this. Every line of code, every integration point, it's for them. An hour later, Emperor Kale's voice boomed through the station's communication system. By authority of the Interstellar Transit Safety Accord, I hereby invoke emergency intervention protocols for the Sanctuary Route Corridor. All operators will provide immediate access to technical teams for crisis prevention. That's our cue, Aiden announced. Remote access coming online now. His screens exploded with data as they connected to the Sanctuary Route's control systems. The situation was worse than his scans had indicated. Resonance cascades were building throughout the network, held in check only by increasingly desperate compensations that were themselves causing new problems. It's like they've been playing technical Jenga for years. One engineer breathed. Pull one support and everything collapses. Then we don't pull, Aiden replied. We build new supports while the old ones are still standing. Sarah, can you handle the harmonic stabilization, Kenji? I need you on traffic rerouting. Everyone else, we're implementing gate-right module by module. They worked in focused silence, code flowing between terminals as the new system took shape. Outside, Aiden could hear elevated voices from the committee chamber. Vale was making a last stand, threatening legal action, withdrawal of services, economic retaliation. Let him threaten, Aiden muttered, not looking up from his work. We'll be done before his lawyers can file the paperwork. Resonance spike in Sector 7. Sarah called out. We're losing containment. Aiden's hands moved on instinct, diving into the cascade before his conscious mind fully processed the problem. This was what he lived for. The dance of variables and solutions, the puzzle of making stubborn technology bend to human will. He could feel the corridor's rhythm, understand its needs, see the path through chaos to stability. Got it, he announced as the reading stabilized. Gate-right's harmonic balancing is online. Starting traffic integration now. This was the critical moment. They had to transition from Heliox's proprietary routing to the open-source system without dropping a single ship in transit. It was like changing engines on an aircraft mid-flight. First batch transitioning, Kenji reported. Clean handoff. Second batch. Also clean. Third. We have full integration. Cheers erupted from the engineering team, but Aiden held up a hand. Not done yet. We need to open those humanitarian lanes and prove the capacity increase. Sarah, initialize the refugee priority channels. New pathways opened in the corridor structure. dedicated lanes that couldn't be bought or sold, only used for humanitarian transport. The effect was immediate. Ships that had been waiting weeks for passage suddenly found themselves with clear paths. Traffic flow increasing, someone reported. 20% over previous capacity. 30, 40. Stabilizing at 57% increase. 57%, Aiden breathed. We just increased the corridor's capacity by more than half, using the same hardware Heliox claimed was maxed out. Because Heliox was creating artificial bottlenecks. Saris's voice came through his earpiece, fierce with vindication. Aiden, the committee is watching your success in real time. Vale's support is crumbling. Through the technical center's windows, Aiden could see the crowds erupting in celebration. Refugees were already booking passage on routes that had been closed to them for months. The economic implications were staggering. More traffic meant more trade, more cultural exchange, more opportunities for everyone. Mr. Cole, Emperor Kale's voice carried through the center's speakers. On behalf of the emergency committee, I offer our gratitude. You've prevented a humanitarian catastrophe and proven the viability of open infrastructure. Please join us in the main chamber. Aiden looked at his exhausted team. This was all of us. Every engineer here made this possible. Go, Tanaka urged. Someone needs to explain to those bureaucrats what we just did. Make sure they understand this is just the beginning. Aiden made his way to the committee chamber, still wearing his work clothes and probably reeking of stress sweat and stimulant drinks. He found the atmosphere completely changed from hours before, where there had been shouting and accusation. Now, there was excited discussion about implementation timelines and expansion possibilities. Vale sat slumped at his podium, looking like a man watching his empire crumble. His lawyers whispered urgently around him, but the energy had shifted decisively against them. Mr. Cole, the committee chair announced as Aiden entered. Please report on the sanctuary route intervention. Aiden activated his holodisplay, showing real-time corridor traffic. The Gatewright OS is fully operational. We've prevented the cascade failure, increased capacity by 57%, and established dedicated humanitarian lanes that are already in use. More importantly, we've done it all with open-source code that any operator can implement and verify. At what cost? Vale interjected weakly. What about the billions in development Heliox invested? Your development created artificial scarcity, Aiden replied. Our development creates abundance. As for your investment, you're welcome to compete in an open market. Provide better service, more innovation, competitive prices. You know, actual business instead of monopolistic exploitation. The committee voted overwhelmingly to support emergency implementation of the Infrastructure Commons Charter. With Gatewright OS as the technical foundation, Heliox would be required to open their systems for integration or face complete exclusion from humanitarian routes. As the session concluded, Aiden found himself surrounded by grateful representatives, each wanting to discuss implementing the system in their territories. But his attention was drawn to a message on his personal device. It was from his mother, watching the news. So proud. Your father would have loved this. Show them what coals are made of. Good news, Saris asked, appearing at his side with 2 cups of what smelled like very strong coffee. The best, Aiden said, showing her the message. My mom's watching. After everything Heliox put her through, she gets to see them fall. Not fall, Saris corrected gently. Transform. That's what makes this solution elegant. We're not destroying Heliox. We're forcing them to evolve. They can still profit, just not through exploitation. You're more forgiving than I am. I'm more political than you are, she smiled. Destroyed enemies create power vacuums. Reformed enemies can become allies. Besides, someone needs to maintain all that infrastructure during the transition. Emperor Kale approached them, his expression unreadable. Mr. Cole, my shield son, you've exceeded expectations today. Thank you, Your Majesty, though I had a lot of help. Leadership isn't about working alone, Kale observed. It's about inspiring others to work together. You did that today. The question now is what you'll do tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Infrastructure Commons Charter is just the beginning. Someone needs to oversee the implementation, ensure standards are maintained, prevent backsliding into old patterns. Kale's amber eyes studied him. Interested in the job, Aiden nearly dropped his coffee. You want me to lead the Commons implementation? Who better? You understand the technology. You've proven you can stand up to corporate pressure. And you have the rather unique position of being legally untouchable, thanks to your shieldkin status. Plus, Saris added with a grin, you'll need something to do between now and the anniversary gala. Can't have you getting bored and redesigning the palace's entire infrastructure grid. I would never, Aiden paused. Actually, I did notice some inefficiencies in your power distribution. Father and daughter laughed, a sound that drew curious looks from around the chamber. The emperor of the Talaran Empire wasn't known for public displays of mirth. Take the night to decide, Kale suggested. Tomorrow, the real work begins. Tonight, celebrate. You've earned it. As the emperor moved away to handle other business, Aiden and Saris found themselves alone in a pocket of relative quiet. How do you feel? She asked. Honestly terrified, Aiden admitted. It's one thing to prove a concept. It's another to implement it across thousands of worlds, each with their own politics, technical standards, and vested interests. But you'll do it anyway. Of course, someone has to. And apparently, I'm too stubborn to let it be someone else. Saris laughed, the sound warming something in Aiden's chest. Good. Stubbornness will serve you well in the coming months. That and a strong support network. Is that an offer? A promise, she said simply. Partners. Remember in reforming infrastructure and suffering through formal dinners. Speaking of which, I should probably start studying that etiquette guide your father sent. 37 forms of greeting. Actually, it's 43. He sent you the abridged version. Aiden groaned, but he was smiling. In the span of days, his life had transformed from corporate obscurity to galactic significance. He was shieldkin to alien royalty, architect of infrastructure revolution, and somehow caught in what might be the galaxy's most complicated romantic situation. But as he looked at the displays showing refugees finally moving through open corridors, he knew it was worth every complication. His mother had been vindicated. Heliox's stranglehold was broken, and the future, for the first time in years, looked bright with possibility. Chapter 4. The Summit of 10 Suns. The Talaran capital city of Solace Crown stretched beneath 10 artificial suns, each one carefully positioned to create eternal daylight in the governmental district. Aiden pressed his face against the shuttle window, marveling at the crystalline towers that seemed to grow from the planet's surface like living things. 3 weeks had passed since the sanctuary route intervention, and the Summit of 10 Suns would determine the future of interstellar infrastructure. Nervous, Saris asked from the seat beside him. She wore formal diplomatic attire, the fabric shifting between deep purples and midnight blues as it caught the light. Terrified, Aiden admitted, adjusting the ceremonial shieldkin insignia on his collar for the 12th time. The committee meeting was one thing. This is heads of state, corporate leaders, the entire galactic power structure in one room. One room with very good security, she assured him. Father insisted on it after Heliox's latest propaganda campaign. The campaign had been vicious, unable to dispute the technical success of Gatewright OS. Vale had shifted tactics to personal attacks. Doctored images showed Aiden meeting with terrorist elements. Paid experts claimed the open-source system was a security vulnerability waiting to be exploited. One particularly creative piece suggested Aiden was mentally unstable due to quantum corridor exposure syndrome, a condition that didn't actually exist. My favorite was the one claiming I'm secretly 3 Rigelians in a human suit, Aiden said, trying for levity. I preferred the theory that you're my father's illegitimate son from a time-traveling affair, Saris countered. The creativity was impressive, even if the physics were impossible. The shuttle descended through Solace Crown's atmosphere, passing through layers of defensive shields that shimmered like soap bubbles. Below, crowds had gathered in the public squares, many carrying signs supporting infrastructure reform. The implementation of Gatewright OS on additional routes had been transformative. Shipping costs had dropped by 30%. Humanitarian supplies reached destinations in days instead of weeks. The economic boom from increased corridor accessibility was undeniable. But success had made enemies. Beyond Heliox, other corporations feared losing their monopolistic advantages. Several minor systems had threatened to withdraw from the Galactic Transit Network entirely, rather than implement open standards. The summit would determine whether the Infrastructure Commons Charter became universal law or remained a voluntary initiative. They landed on the Palace of Concordance's private platform, where Emperor Kale waited with a full honor guard. He embraced Saris warmly, then turned to Aiden with a smile that held both pride and concern. "Shield son," he greeted formally. "Ready to face the wolves?" "I've faced worse," Aiden replied, thinking of the explosion that started everything. "At least political wolves don't literally blow up in your face." "Don't be too certain," Kyle warned, only half joking. "Come. The others are gathering, and I want to brief you on the current dynamics." They walked through corridors that seemed carved from single pieces of amethyst, their footsteps echoing on floors, polished to mirror brightness. Kyle spoke as they moved, his voice low and urgent. "The Earth Alliance, Mars Congressional Republic, and most of the outer colonies support full implementation. The Centauri Merchants Guild is wavering. They want guarantees their existing contracts won't be voided. The real opposition comes from the corporate collective, led by Vale and his allies." "What's their play?" Aiden asked. "They're pushing for a compromise," Saris answered, disgust coloring her tone. "Limited implementation on secondary routes only. Existing major corridors would remain under current management for stability purposes. It would gut the entire initiative." "They've also prepared a surprise," Kale added grimly. "Our intelligence suggests they've found something to use against you personally. Aiden, be ready for an ambush." They entered an antechamber, where other delegates were gathering. Aiden recognized some faces from news feeds and diplomatic briefings. President Martinez of Mars nodded respectfully. The Zilani representative from the committee floated near a window, her crystalline form catching the light from the 10 suns. And there, holding court with a group of richly dressed executives, stood Orion Vale. The CEO had recovered his composure since the committee debacle. His suit was perfectly tailored, his smile confident, his eyes cold as space when they met Aiden's across the room. He raised his glass in a mocking toast before turning back to his conversation. "He seems cheerful for someone whose monopoly is crumbling," Aiden observed. "That worries me," Saris admitted. "Vale doesn't accept defeat. He pivots, adapts, finds new angles of attack." A chime announced the summit's commencement. The delegates filed into the main chamber, a vast circular room with a transparent dome showing the 10 suns in their eternal dance. Seats were arranged in concentric rings, with heads of state in the center and advisors radiating outward. Aiden took his place behind Emperor Kale, hyper-aware of the eyes tracking his movement. The summit's mediator, an ancient Sagittarian whose 4 arms moved in complex patterns as she spoke, called the assembly to order. "We gather beneath the 10 suns to determine the path forward for our interconnected civilizations. The question before us, shall the Infrastructure Commons Charter become binding law for all members of the Galactic Transit Accord?" The initial presentations went as expected. Supporters praised the economic benefits and humanitarian improvements. Opposition voices warned of security risks and transition costs. Data flew back and forth like weapons in a bloodless war. Then Vale took the floor. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Before we vote on this radical restructuring of our entire infrastructure, shouldn't we examine the man proposing it? Aidan Cole presents himself as a humble engineer, motivated by justice. But what do we really know about him?" Aidan's hands clenched, but Saris placed a calming hand on his arm. "Let him speak," she whispered. "Reacting emotionally is what he wants." Vale activated a holographic display. 3 years ago, Mr. Cole was dismissed from Vector Dynamics for what was officially termed ideological incompatibility. The real reason he attempted to steal proprietary corridor technology. "That's a lie," Aidan said, loudly enough to carry. "I was fired for refusing to implement cost-cutting measures that would have compromised safety systems." "Do you have proof?" Vale asked smoothly. "Because I have signed affidavits from your former supervisors describing your erratic behavior and dangerous disregard for intellectual property rights." The affidavits appeared on screen. Official-looking documents with corporate seals. Aidan recognized the names. Middle managers who do anything to climb the ladder. Of course they'd sign whatever Vale put in front of them. Furthermore, Vale continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Let's discuss the interesting timing of recent events. Mr. Cole just happens to be present when a demonstration explodes. He just happens to have a ready-made solution for corridor management. He just happens to benefit from the chaos, rising from obscurity to influence in mere weeks. Doesn't that seem convenient?" "Are you suggesting I orchestrated the explosion?" Aidan stood, anger finally overcoming caution. "The explosion your own systems caused. The one with your authentication signature on the override commands." "Anyone can fake a signature with enough technical knowledge," Vale replied. "And you've demonstrated plenty of that. Tell me, Mr. Cole, how much did you stand to gain from Heliox's embarrassment, fame, power, the favor of a princess?" The last comment was a step too far. Saris rose, her diplomatic composure cracking. "How dare you imply—" "I imply nothing," Vale interrupted smoothly. "I merely observe that Mr. Cole has benefited tremendously from a crisis he was perfectly positioned to exploit. The committee should consider whether we're witnessing genuine reform or an elaborate power grab." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates nodded thoughtfully at Vale's arguments, while others protested the baseless accusations. The Sagittarian mediator gestured for order, her 4 arms creating complex patterns of authority. Emperor Kale stood slowly, and his presence commanded immediate attention. "Mr. Vale raises questions about character and motivation. Very well. Let us examine character." He gestured to the display systems. "I present to the summit the following evidence." The screens, filled with new data, financial records, communication logs, and technical analyses that Aidan had never seen before. Kyle had been holding back, waiting for the right moment. "Heliox Dynamics has systematically manipulated corridor access for profit at the expense of billions of lives. But their crimes go deeper. They've bribed officials on 17 worlds to maintain their monopoly. They've sabotaged competitors' equipment, causing accidents that killed hundreds. They've even," Kale's voice dropped dangerously, "attempted to assassinate reformist politicians who threatened their interests." "Lies and fabrications," Vale shouted, but his face had gone pale. "Every document is verified by quantum encryption," Kale continued relentlessly. "But, since you question Mr. Cole's character, let's examine yours. Tell the summit about the Proxima mining colony. Mr. Vale, tell them why you redirected their emergency evacuation corridor to serve a luxury cruise liner. Tell them about the 800 miners who died in the asteroid impact because they couldn't escape in time." The chamber fell silent. Even Vale's allies looked shaken by the specific accusation. There were technical limitations," Vale stammered. "There were profit calculations," Aidan interjected, finding his voice again. "I've seen the internal memos. You estimated the lawsuit settlements would cost less than the cruise line's contract penalties. 800 lives reduced to a line item on a balance sheet. But we're not here to trade accusations, Saris added, ever the diplomat. We're here to decide the future. The question isn't whether individuals are perfect. It's whether the system serves people or profits. Gatewright OS has already proven its worth on multiple routes. Corridor capacity is up, costs are down, and no one dies waiting for corporate approval to travel. The debate raged for hours. Delegates presented arguments, counter-arguments, and compromises that satisfied no one. Through it all, Aiden watched the flow of opinion, seeing the summit balanced on a knife's edge. Then the emergency alert sounded. The chamber's displays flashed red as priority communications flooded in. A massive solar storm in the Vega system had destabilized the primary corridor network. Thousands of ships were stranded, including a medical convoy carrying vaccines for a plague outbreak on Vega 5. The corridor control station is overwhelmed, someone reported. Heliox systems can't compensate for the stellar interference. Estimated time to restore service 72 hours. 72 hours. The Vegan ambassador stood, her blue skin flushing purple with emotion. The plague will kill millions in that time. We need those vaccines now. All eyes turned to Vale, whose company controlled the Vega corridors. He was frantically consulting with his technical team, but their faces told the story. They had no solution. Mr. Cole, Emperor Kale said formally, can Gatewright OS handle this situation? Aiden was already analyzing the data streams. The stellar storm was massive. Electromagnetic interference unlike anything in recent records. But as he studied the patterns, he saw possibilities. Maybe, he said slowly. The storm is causing quantum decoherence in the standard corridor matrices. But if we implement dynamic frequency shifting, create adaptive pathways that surf the interference instead of fighting it. Theoretical nonsense, Vale spat. You can't simply rewrite the laws of corridor physics because lives are at stake. Watch me, Aiden replied. He turned to the mediator. I need emergency authorization to access the Vega corridor network, full administrative privileges, and I need every engineer in this room who's willing to help. The mediator looked at the assembled delegates. All in favor of granting emergency access? Hands rose throughout the chamber. Even some of Vale's allies voted yes, unwilling to be seen opposing a rescue effort. Authorization granted, the mediator declared. Save those lives, Mr. Cole. Aiden didn't waste time on thanks. He activated his portable workstation, diving into the Vega system's architecture. Around him, volunteer engineers began connecting, adding their expertise to his effort. Saris coordinated communications, while Kale handled the political fallout. The storm's pattern is semi-predictable, Aiden announced, his fingers flying over holographic interfaces. We can't stop it, but we can use it, implementing dynamic pathway algorithms now. The main display showed the Vega corridor network as a three-dimensional web of light. Red indicators marked failed pathways, growing like infection through the system. But as Aiden worked, green began to appear. New routes, impossible under Heliox's rigid protocols, opened like flowers in the quantum foam. It's working, someone breathed. The corridors are stabilizing. Not just stabilizing, Aiden corrected, sweat beading on his forehead from concentration. Improving. The storm's energy can be channeled into the corridor matrix. We're not fighting nature. We're dancing with it. On screen, the stranded medical convoy began to move. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence as the new pathway solidified. The journey that would have taken 72 hours under Heliox's system was completed in 37 minutes. The chamber erupted in applause. The Vegan ambassador was openly weeping with relief. Even hardened diplomats seemed moved by the display of innovation under pressure. That, Emperor Kale said into the relative quiet that followed, is what open infrastructure makes possible. Not rigid control, but adaptive solutions. Not profit calculations, but human ingenuity applied to human needs. The vote, when it came, wasn't close. The Infrastructure Commons Charter passed with an overwhelming majority. Even some of Vale's strongest supporters abandoned him, unwilling to defend a system that had nearly cost millions of lives. Vale himself sat slumped in defeat, his empire of artificial scarcity crumbling in real time. But as security moved to escort him out, pending investigation of the various crimes Cale had exposed, he locked eyes with Aiden one last time. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You've won this battle. But the war for control never ends. There will always be those who see infrastructure as power, not service." "Maybe," Aiden agreed, surprising himself with his calm. "But now, they'll have to fight in the open, against transparent systems and accountable oversight. Your way of doing business just became a lot harder." Vale was led away, and the summit turned to implementation details. But Aiden found himself drained, the adrenaline of crisis giving way to exhaustion. He slipped out onto a balcony, needing air and quiet. Ceres found him there, watching the 10 suns perform their eternal dance above Solace Crown. "You did it," she said simply. "We did it," he corrected. "I just typed fast and hoped for the best." She laughed, the sound bright against the stellar backdrop. "Don't undersell yourself. What you did in there, adapting the entire network in real time while a room full of politicians watched, that was extraordinary." "It was necessary," Aiden said. "Those vaccines had to get through." "And that," Ceres moved closer, her hand finding his, "is why you're extraordinary. Not because you can code miracles, but because you see lives where others see logistics." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the celestial mechanics of the artificial suns. Below, the city celebrated as news of the Charter's passage spread. Change was coming to the galaxy, fundamental and far-reaching. "Your father mentioned something about overseeing implementation," Aiden said eventually. "I suppose I should start planning for that." "Actually," Ceres's voice carried amusement, "he has another announcement to make first. Remember that rite of shieldkin he performed? Hard to forget. The ceremonial armor still doesn't fit right." "Well, there's a detail he didn't mention initially. The rite has certain implications, traditional expectations, especially when performed for someone who saves a royal heir." Aiden turned to look at her, seeing mischief in her violet eyes. "What kind of expectations?" "Oh, nothing major. Just that shieldkin who save heirs are traditionally considered prime candidates for closer family connections. It's actually quite romantic in the old stories. The brave warrior welcomed not just as protector, but as potential—" "Ceres," Aiden interrupted, heat rising in his cheeks. "Are you saying your father legally positioned me as—" "A highly eligible suitor, one with pre-approved royal consent, who's already proven compatible with the family through successful infrastructure reform." She grinned. "Welcome to Talaran politics, where even ancient traditions can serve modern purposes." "Your father is terrifying," Aiden said, not for the first time. "He's also usually right," Ceres observed. "Though don't tell him I said that. His ego is sufficient as is." "And you?" Aiden asked, suddenly serious. "What do you think about ancient traditions and modern purposes?" She considered the question, her expression thoughtful. "I think traditions are just frameworks. What matters is what we build within them. And I think," she squeezed his hand, "we build very well together." Before Aiden could respond, Emperor Cale's voice boomed from inside. "Shield Sun Princess, stop hiding on balconies and come celebrate. We have a galaxy to rebuild." "Duty calls," Ceres sighed, "ready to face your future." Aiden looked at her. At the celebrating city below, at the 10 suns maintaining their perfect dance. A month ago, he'd been a nobody engineer with rejected proposals and a disgraced mother. Now he stood at the center of galactic reform, with responsibilities he was only beginning to understand, and relationships that defied every expectation. "Ready or not," he said, "let's go change the universe." They returned to the summit hand in hand, prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. The Infrastructure Commons Charter was just the beginning. The real work of building a more equitable galaxy started now. But first, apparently, there was a celebration to attend, with ceremonial armor that still didn't fit right, and a future that suddenly seemed bright with infinite possibility. Chapter 5: Crowns, Commons, and a Family Joke. 6 months had passed since the summit of 10 suns, and the galaxy looked different through the windows of the Infrastructure Commons headquarters. Aiden stood in his office, watching cargo ships stream through the newly opened humanitarian corridors above New Geneva Station. Each vessel represented lives saved, families reunited, possibilities realized. The quarterly reports. Director, his assistant, Thomas Chen, announced from the doorway. Also, Princess Saris has arrived for the treaty signing. "Thank you, Thomas. Send her in when she's ready." Aiden turned back to his desk, marveling at how natural the title Director had become. The Infrastructure Commons Implementation Office had grown from a handful of volunteers to a multi-species organization spanning 300 systems. They'd converted 40% of all major corridors to Gatewright OS, with more joining every week. Admiring your handiwork, Saris entered without ceremony, as was her way when they were alone. She wore traveling clothes rather than diplomatic robes, having just returned from negotiating with the Outer Rim Coalition. Admiring the collective handiwork of about 10,000 engineers, diplomats, and bureaucrats, Aiden corrected. "All I do is sign documents and try not to break anything." Modest as always. She moved to stand beside him at the window. The Outer Rim agreed to full implementation. By the way, even the holdout systems in the Cascade Nebula. "How did you manage that?" "I pointed out their trade revenue has increased 60% since their neighbors adopted open standards. Nothing convinces skeptics like their own balance sheets." A chime from Aiden's desk interrupted them. Priority message from the legal department. He read it and felt his good mood evaporate. "What is it?" Saris asked, noting his expression. "Heliox. They're filing an injunction against tomorrow's ceremony, claiming the transfer of their remaining assets to the Commons violates their shareholders' rights." Vale's last gasp from his minimum security prison. His lawyer's last gasp. But they found a judge willing to hear arguments. Aiden rubbed his temples. "If they delay the transfer, we could lose momentum. Several corporations are watching to see if they can challenge the charter. Then we don't let them delay." Saris activated her communicator. "Father, we have a situation." The conversation that followed was brief and in rapid Talaran. Aiden caught perhaps one word in 10, his language lessons progressing slowly, despite Saris's patient tutoring. When she finished, she was smiling. "My father suggests we move the ceremony up, tonight, instead of tomorrow, before any injunction can be filed. Can we organize that in 6 hours? We're about to find out." What followed was controlled chaos. Staff members rushed to contact delegates, prepare documents, and transform the headquarters main hall into a ceremonial space. Aiden found himself swept along in the whirlwind, signing authorizations, making rapid decisions, and somehow finding time to change into the formal robes of his office. "You look distinguished," Saris observed, adjusting his collar. They had a moment's peace in his office while the final preparations continued outside. "I look like a theater curtain gained sentience," Aiden countered, gesturing at the flowing fabric. "How do you make these things look elegant?" "Practice, and the knowledge that looking foolish in formal wear is a time-honored tradition across all species." She paused, her expression growing serious. "Aiden, there's something we need to discuss before the ceremony. If this is about the catering, I already told them no Rigelian mind flowers. The last diplomatic dinner was confusing enough without telepathic appetizers. Not the catering. She took a breath. The ceremony tonight isn't just about the Heliox asset transfer. Father has decided to make another announcement about the full implications of your shieldkin status. Aiden felt his stomach drop. The traditional expectations you mentioned. He's been remarkably patient, by Talaran standards. 6 months without pressing the issue, but with the commons established and stable. He feels it's time to clarify your position. Saris, I don't want our relationship to be about political tradition or your father's machinations. What we have is real, she finished firmly. Which is why I'm warning you now. Whatever Father announces tonight, remember that we choose our own path. Traditions are just suggestions with ceremonial weight. Before Aiden could respond, Thomas appeared at the door. Director, Your Highness, the delegates are assembled. Emperor Kale requests your presence. They made their way to the main hall, now transformed into a space worthy of galactic history. Representatives from every major government and dozens of minor ones filled the chamber. The documents transferring Heliox's infrastructure to public control lay on the central podium, quantum-sealed and waiting. Emperor Kale stood at the head of the assembly, resplendent in full, ceremonial armor that seemed to absorb and redirect light. He nodded as Aiden and Saris took their positions. Citizens of the galaxy, Kale began, his voice carrying effortlessly. We gather to witness the largest transfer of private assets to public good in recorded history. The corridors that connect our civilizations will no longer serve profit alone, but the needs of all beings. Orion Vale's successor at Heliox, a nervous woman named Patricia Wells, stepped forward to sign the transfer documents. Her hand shook slightly as she authorized the conversion of trillions in corporate assets to commons management. With this signature, she said, voice barely above a whisper, Heliox Dynamics acknowledges the supremacy of public interest in essential infrastructure. Aiden stepped forward next, signing as director of the Infrastructure Commons. With this signature, we accept the responsibility of managing these assets for the benefit of all, with transparency, equity, and justice as our guiding principles. The assembled delegates erupted in applause as the documents sealed themselves. Quantum encryption, making the transfer irreversible. Whatever legal challenges Vale's lawyers planned were now moot. But tonight marks another transition, Emperor Kale continued as the applause died down. 6 months ago, a human engineer named Aiden Cole saved my daughter's life. By ancient law, he became shieldkin to the Talaran throne, protected by our strength and honored by our traditions. Aiden felt every eye in the room turn to him. Beside him, Sarah stood perfectly still, her diplomatic mask firmly in place. What few knew, Kale continued, was that I completed the full rite of shieldkin that very day. Not the abbreviated version used for honored allies, but the complete ceremony reserved for those who risked their lives for the royal line. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several Talaran nobles looked shocked. The full rite hadn't been performed in over a century. By completing this rite, Kale's voice carried a note of amusement now. I acknowledged Aiden Cole not merely as protector, but as potential heir. In human terms, I legally adopted him as my son the moment he shielded Saris from harm. The murmurs became exclamations. Aiden felt the blood drain from his face. He did what? Furthermore, Kale continued, clearly enjoying the drama. Talaran law is quite clear about the inheritance rights of shieldkin who save direct heirs. Should anything happen to me, Aiden would have a legitimate claim to influence in the Empire, equal to any consent partner Saris might choose. Father, Saris said, her diplomatic composure finally cracking. What are you doing? I am clarifying legal realities, Kale replied innocently, and perhaps encouraging certain young people to stop dancing around obvious mutual affection. Aiden, my shield son, do you have anything to say? All eyes turned to Aiden. He stood frozen for a moment, processing the fact that he'd apparently been alien royalty for 6 months without knowing it. Then, because the situation was too absurd for conventional responses, he started laughing. "Your Majesty," he managed between chuckles. "Are you telling me you secretly adopted me, made me royalty, and set up dynastic succession rights, all because I tackled your daughter during an explosion?" "Essentially, yes," Kyle agreed. "Though I prefer to think of it as recognizing potential and ensuring beneficial alliances." "This is insane," Aiden said, but he was smiling. "A year ago, I was nobody. Now I'm apparently in line for an alien throne." "Only if you marry into it properly," Kale noted with pointed looks between Aiden and Saris. "The Shieldkin laws are quite specific about succession requiring formal bonds with the direct heir." "Father," Saris protested, "you can't simply announce succession planning as a matchmaking scheme." "I'm not matchmaking," Kyle said with dignity. "I'm ensuring legal clarity. The fact that you two have been making eyes at each other for 6 months is merely convenient timing." The assembly had descended into delighted chaos. The humans found it hilarious. The Tallarans were scandalized by their emperor's break with protocol, and everyone else was taking bets on what would happen next. "Your Majesty," Aiden said, raising his voice to be heard. "I'm deeply honored by your faith in me, but any relationship between Saris and myself will be based on mutual choice, not political convenience or ancient law." "Of course," Kyle agreed easily. "I'm simply removing legal obstacles. What you do with that freedom is your choice. Though I should mention the anniversary gala is next week, and it would be convenient to announce something by then. The catering is already ordered." "You ordered catering based on a potential engagement announcement?" Saris asked, incredulous. "I'm an optimist," Kale shrugged. "Also, the deposit was non-refundable." Despite the chaos, or perhaps because of it, the rest of the ceremony proceeded smoothly. The asset transfer was completed, implementation timelines confirmed, and the future of open infrastructure secured. As delegates began to depart, many stopped to congratulate Aiden on his unusual elevation, though whether they meant his directorship or his adoption was unclear. Finally, Aiden and Saris found themselves alone on a balcony overlooking the station. Earth hung in the distance, a blue jewel among the stars. "So," Aiden said eventually, "your father legally made me your brother to facilitate us potentially becoming not siblings. Talaran culture is complex." "Shieldkin isn't exactly sibling," Saris corrected. "It's more like family adjacent with romantic options. The ancient Tallarans were pragmatic about alliance building." "And you," Aiden turned to face her. "What's your pragmatic assessment?" "I think," she said slowly, "that my father is manipulative, tradition-obsessed, and absolutely insufferable when he's right about something." "Is he right about us?" "That depends." Saris moved closer. "How do you feel about converting our successful professional partnership into something more personal, with the understanding that it comes with significant political baggage, media scrutiny, and my father's endless commentary on proper ceremonial protocols? Don't forget the 43 forms of formal greeting I still haven't mastered. 47 now. They added 4 for Shieldkin who transitioned to consent partners." "Of course they did." Aiden reached out, taking her hands. "Saris, politics aside, traditions aside, your terrifying father aside, I've been falling for you since you laughed at my joke about Rigelian conspiracies. You're brilliant, compassionate, and the only person who can make infrastructure reform sound romantic. High praise from the man who saved the galaxy with open-source coding." She smiled. "Though, technically, you're already family. This could be considered scandalous by some interpretations. After everything else we've disrupted, what's one more tradition?" She laughed, the sound bright as starlight. "Then yes, Aiden Cole, Shieldkin of Talora. Director of Infrastructure Commons, and apparently my father's favorite adoption project. I choose you, politics and all. And I choose you, Princess Ceres, master negotiator, and the only person who can make me enjoy ceremonial dinners. They kissed as Earth rose behind them, sealing a partnership that had begun with an explosion and evolved into something neither had expected. In the distance, corridors pulsed with the light of free travel, connecting worlds that had once been divided by corporate greed. "We should probably tell your father," Aiden said when they finally parted. "He already knows," Ceres assured him. "I guarantee he's watching through security feeds right now, calculating wedding logistics. Is nothing private in your family? Privacy is for people who don't reshape galactic infrastructure. We're public figures now, remember." As if to prove her point, Aiden's communicator chimed with an urgent message. He checked it and groaned. "The Cascade Nebula Coalition wants to discuss implementation schedules. Tonight." "The romance of public service," Ceres said dryly. "Go. Save the galaxy through bureaucracy. I'll handle my father's gloating. Together tomorrow. Together always. We have infrastructure to maintain and a father to manage. Both require constant attention." They parted with purpose, returning to their duties with the knowledge that personal and professional had merged into something stronger. The infrastructure commons had given the galaxy new possibilities. Now it was time to build a future worthy of them. Later that night, Aiden received a message from his mother. "Saw the news about your adoption and possible engagement. Your father would be so proud. P. Emperor Kale sent me a fruit basket with a note saying, 'Welcome to the family.' Should I be concerned?" Aiden laughed, typing back, "Extremely concerned, but in the best way possible." The next morning brought new challenges. 3 systems needed emergency corridor repairs. The Merchants Guild wanted to renegotiate fee structures. And Emperor Kale had sent Aiden a 30-page document on proper gift-giving etiquette for official engagements. "No pressure," the accompanying note read. "But the anniversary gala approaches, and the catering really is non-refundable. Also, Ceres prefers earth orchids to Talaran crystal flowers. Use that information wisely. Your proud father by combat adoption, Kyle." Aiden looked at the message, then at the queue of infrastructure emergencies, then at the picture on his desk of Ceres at the signing ceremony. 6 months ago, he'd been a nobody engineer with big dreams and bigger frustrations. Now he was reshaping galactic civilization while navigating the universe's most complicated family dynamics. "Thomas," he called to his assistant, "clear my schedule for an hour this afternoon. I need to shop for earth orchids, and maybe take a course in alien family management." "Of course, Director. Should I also schedule time to review the 47 ceremonial greetings?" "Make it 50, Aiden sighed. Knowing Emperor Kale, he'll have added 3 more by lunch. But despite the chaos, the politics, and the perpetual sense of being 3 steps behind Emperor Kale's planning, Aiden couldn't stop smiling. He'd helped build something that mattered, found love in the most unexpected place, and gained a family that defied all convention. The galaxy's corridors pulsed with free movement, carrying hope to those who had been trapped by corporate greed. The infrastructure commons grew stronger each day, proof that public good could triumph over private profit. And somewhere in the palace on Talora, Emperor Kale was probably already planning grandchildren's names. Aiden Cole, former nobody engineer, current galactic infrastructure director, and future, whatever his adopted alien family had planned, got back to work. There were worlds to connect, lives to improve, and at least 47 ways to properly greet his future in-laws. The explosion that had started it all seemed like a lifetime ago. But as Aiden approved the next round of humanitarian corridor expansions, he reflected that sometimes the best changes came from the most unexpected catalysts. even if those catalysts included overprotective alien emperors with matchmaking tendencies and a complete disregard for conventional courtship timelines.